What's up guys, Speo here, and today we'll be building a basic big room house drop. That means we're gonna have a 4 on the floor kick drum, some sub bass and a nice reverby perk to give us that Martin Garrixy type feel. Let me just give you a quick example of what we'll be building today, minus the little build up front. You could of course apply a lot more processing to these sounds, but this is just a basic tutorial to give you some hints of how you would go about creating a big room house drop. So let's get to it. Let me just hook it up. There you go. First up, we want the kick drum, and for this I'm just gonna create a Kong drum designer and load up a drum kit from the Tech House kits, which are absolutely awesome, so be sure to check those out if you're going into this big room house direction. And I'm just gonna select the Skyline.Kong kit because it has a very nice kick. What I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna open up the programmer and shorten the kick a bit so we only have the nice first initial punch. There you go. Now let me just quickly record 4 beats. But first I'm gonna bring up the BPM to 128, which is where all the usual house stuff sits. There you go, let me just quickly record it. Hop into the sequencer and I'm just gonna quantize it and move it up so we got some bars of beats. There you go. That's it for the kick for now. Next up, I'm gonna create a Thor, which is gonna be my sub bass. I'm gonna set it to mono red trigger and open up the programmer, and I'm gonna bring up the sustain on the amp envelope all the way, give it some release and also a bit of attack, because we want the kick to be the initial punch and then we always want the sub bass to come in afterwards. So I'm just gonna bring this up to about 300 milliseconds. And I'm gonna switch the oscillator to a sine wave on octave 2. Then I'm gonna deactivate the filter for now, and that's it for the Thor. Next up, I'm gonna create an stereo imager. Now I'm doing this because I want to split the signal and I want to distort the higher end of this sine wave to give it some more harmonics and just some more grit so we can actually hear the sub bass pumping. So what I'm gonna do is create a stereo imager, and just beneath that I'm gonna create a Scream for distortion unit, and next up we'll have our Spider audio merger and splitter. Now I'm gonna flip the rack around, disconnect the output of the Scream 4 and route it into the merger alongside the separate out of the stereo imager. Now as you can see, the stereo imager delivers the separate out, which is just the low band, into the merger, and it'll route the full signal into the Scream 4, which is also going into the merger. Next up, I'm gonna solo the high band on the stereo imager, so we can only have the high band running through the Scream 4. And I'm gonna set the Scream 4 to warp mode, bring up the sharpness and bias all the way, and I'm gonna leave the damage where it is. Now I have to reconnect the merger to the mix channel so we can actually hear our bass. And there we have our subtle distortion. We can now change the level of the distortion using the master level of the Scream 4, with which we can control the level of the highs, which have the harmonics and stuff. We can also change the X over frequency to change the amount of frequencies that are affected by the distortion. But somewhere at about 700 seems cool to me. I'm also gonna bring the harmonics down a bit, because this is still our sub bass, which should deliver the punch and stuff. And for this I'm gonna just open up the mix channel here and create an equalizer and boost some lows just to give it that a bit more punch at about like 78 Hertz, and I'm gonna give the Q up a bit. And I'm also gonna turn on the low cut to get rid of frequencies under 30 Hertz, which is just rumble. There you go. I can also disconnect the right out of the audio input to turn this into a mono signal, since it's a sub bass. Sweet. Now in the sequencer I'm just gonna join those clips and pop them down into the sub bass lane, open that one up, and I'm gonna select them all and click the little this little button next to the length field which is gonna make them all the same length, and then I'm gonna pull them up so they're actually like this, and I can even make them a little bit longer, so we have a slight gap between each note. And of course I have to move them up to A2, because A minor is usually where I write my songs, so A2 is the sub bass place for this kind of scale for me. Sweet. Now we got the low end of our big room house drops set up. Next up, I'm just gonna give it a little bit of noise, because noise is always a good thing to have in a drop, because it kind of just fills out the spectrum. So I'm gonna create a Thor and switch the oscillator to a noise oscillator, switch the filter to a bandpass filter, so a state variable filter on bandpass mode, sorry. I'm gonna bring the velocity and envelope amount all the way down, and I'm gonna give it some resonance like 50. Then I'm gonna automate the frequency and also bring up the sustain on the amp envelope all the way. In the sequencer, I'm just gonna draw in a quick clip for the noise. Here we are. And I'm gonna have it start on the second punch, so we have this slight delay in, in impact and in frequency spectrum stuff that'll make for this nice kind of big room house feel, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm gonna have it open, the filter, I'm gonna have it open all along the first kind of part, and I'm gonna bring it down quite rapidly, and then I'm gonna bring it down all the way towards the end of the clip. I can also shorten the sub bass notes a bit, I think, because they're quite long and they're kind of clipping and clicking. So I'm gonna bring them down so they have 1/16 in between them. Sweet. So now we're getting pretty close to our final result. The only thing that's missing now is our perk. And for the perk, I'm just gonna create a NNXT advanced sampler, open it up, and as a sample, I'll select from the Kong patches once again. So from the Reason Factory sound bank, Kong patches, Kong sounds and samples, I'm gonna go into the perk, so the percussion, and I'm gonna select the woods folder and select the where is it? The CLV verb BL.wav, which is a nice kind of clave sound. I think that's how it's called, and it's a pretty good sound for this kind of situation. Next up, I'm gonna right-click the sample in the sampler window, and I'm gonna select Set Root Notes from Pitch Detection, which is gonna enable me to play this clave sound as I would play a piano or a synth. And what I'm also gonna do is I'm gonna just drag out this zone to about, just down a bit, so I can actually access these lower notes as well. There you go. Now that this is set up, I can go on to creating an equalizer. And I'm just gonna boost some of the high mids a bit to get this airy kind of feel and to make this really pop out. And I'm gonna get rid of some of the low mids to make this sound less resonant, so I can really push it then with the limiter. I'm not gonna take out too much though, because we still want to hear where this clave is playing and what note it is playing. I think that's fine. Next up, I'm gonna create a reverb unit. And I'm gonna go with the RV700 Advanced Reverb because it's a good reverb. But if you do have a soft tube like Tsar unit or something, a rack extension, I'd recommend going with, or I'd recommend trying out some different reverb types, because the reverb is really important on this big room house perk or synth, because it really defines how this whole thing sounds. I like the sound of the RV700, but maybe you don't, so if you do have access to some rack extensions, I'd recommend trying them out right here. I'm just gonna open up the patch browser and chuck in the film score preset, which is always a nice way to go. I'm gonna bring the pre-delay down to 0 milliseconds, and I'm also gonna reduce the early reflections level to about -7.5. But these settings are just my personal preference, so you can play with those. Of course, I'm gonna bring the dry wet down to about 45. And I'm also going to bring the high EQ up a bit, so we actually have some more high frequencies in this reverb. Sweet. Next up comes the compressor, which is really important on this perk, because the compressor is going to make the perk pop more, and it'll also put an emphasis on the reverb, which is just what we want. So let's create a compressor, and I'm going to bring up the attack a bit, and I'm going to bring the release all the way down, so we have this nice kind of reverb tail really coming out. And I'm going to bring the ratio up and the threshold down quite a bit, give it some input gain, and let's see what we got. You can hear when I hit the high velocity, when I hit my keys with high velocity, it even starts to give us this clicking sound, which is not really good, but we can fix this later. Okay, sweet. I think now we're all set. We only need to record a little phrase right here, so this is just what I'm gonna do now. And I messed up. I think you know what melody I'm going for, by the way. I think I messed up again, but we can fix this now inside the clip. Don't blame me, I'm a terrible, terrible keyboard player, so I have to do a lot in the MIDI clip itself. But that's just fine for me. Anyway, sorry, I keep hitting space by accident. First up, we want to quantize this clip. And when working with perk or synth sounds with a lot of reverb in these big room house drops, you usually want to quantize these to triplets. So I'm gonna select 1/16 triplets for the quantize value, select the clip and apply the quantization. There you go. Oh, I'm gonna switch it up to 1/8. And there we are. Now I'm actually gonna fix this, because this is all wrong. There we are. I think that's about how it goes. Let me just quickly check. Okay, I was a little bit wrong, but anyway, you should think of your own melody anyways. So basically just go for triplets and have some kind of nice variations in there, go up or down and stuff. You'll think of a great melody, I'm sure. Next up, I'm just gonna hit this little button next to the velocity to these notes, so they're all the same velocity, and I'm gonna bring them down to 100, which is a nice neutral value. I can also shorten them a bit, so I'm gonna make them all the same length, and I'm gonna bring them down to about 1/32th. I don't really know, like this value right here. And here we are. I'm just gonna pull this up, and there is your basic big room house drop. What you can do then, of course, is if you want to build a second section, as we already have our drum kit loaded up, you might want to give this some cymbals. Sorry. Just give it some cymbals, but I'm gonna bring them down to 100 on the second run. And you might also want to get some snares in, like so. And you can always bring the second snare to right offbeat and the first snare right in front of the kick, which is gonna make for this nice pattern which you hear a lot in these kind of tech house tracks and stuff. So, like so. Here we are. But this is just if you want to have some variation in the second phrase. Great, I hope this tutorial was useful. If it was, drop a like, that would be much appreciated. And there are more tutorials incoming, and I'll see you then. Have a good one of whatever you're having.